welcome to Feedback, the week of October 11th, 2011. It's almost like 10-11-11. I guess that's kind of good in marketing terms.
It was 11-11-11.
Yeah. Anyway, this is a very special episode of Feedback, one where I'm going to be at a bike store and Gordon Jump is going to touch me inappropriately. My friend Dudley is going to play Neptune. No, it's actually not that episode of Feedback.
Wow.
We have a very...
It was so far over my head that I don't think it was even in this room right now.
Is twice your age.
Yeah.
I would like to introduce a very special guest, Vince Zampella at Respawn Entertainment. We have him here.
We never clap on this show either. We should do more clapping.
Yeah, but we've never had Vince on.
That's true.
Now, okay,
That's true.
another reason to clap, standing next to him, as you might remember, Abby Heppy.
Yay!
Now working as Respawn Community Manager. How is that working out?
Well,
Awkward.
I came here to talk. I didn't realize I was getting roped into this.
Oh, no,
I
whenever
wanted
we
some
have
advice on
meetings.
how to deal with,
Yeah, we have microphones and we record it. Obviously, Matt Kyle, Blair Herder, thank you guys so much. So yeah, we have Vince, and so when we have Vince, we're going to take as much advantage of Vince as we can. And so it's all Vince all the time here on Feedback today.
Am I supposed to stop that?
So
You need to manage that community of one over there right now.
so we have you been busy, Vince?
Yes. Yeah. It's been a crazy couple years here.
Obviously, you know there was a lot of drama. Respawn got started. Obviously, you are making a game at Respawn. We all know that.
Yes.
By virtue of the fact that you don't want to say too much too early and like that, we're not going to get into the details of what you're working on.
Right.
But I think we can pacify people that there is a game in development somewhere out there.
Yeah, we're working really hard. We've got an amazing team over there, including Abby.
Yay!
And yeah, the guys are working really hard. There's a lot of good stuff, starting to come online now. So some good ideas. We're not ready to talk about it yet. But there's a lot of really good guys working really hard for the fans. So.
And the game is coming out under the EA Partners label.
Correct.
Which is obviously sort of puts you in a nice creative position, it sounds like, to actually sort of, do what you want to.
Yeah, that was one of the things when we started Respawn, we wanted to own the IP. It was important to us so we can control what happened to it, the direction that it went. And in dealing with EAP, that was one of the things they gave us. So, the partnership's been great. It's, they've been really kind of supporting us. So it's going along right now.
Yeah, obviously, let's there's a small elephant in the room. Let's just sort of address this so we can move on and talk about the fun things about the game industry. Obviously, your being at Electronic Arts comes after a fair amount of drama during your and Jason and a lot of people's departure from Activision right after the launch of Modern Warfare 2. Obviously, this has created sort of some legal troubles. You are obviously suing Activision, and there's a countersuit coming from them. If you would sort of describe where you are right now in those legal proceedings.
Jason and I were terminated. We formed Respawn. We've grown the company. There is a lawsuit. We're suing them. They're countersuing. We're anxious for our day in court. Right now we're concentrating on making a game, not on a lawsuit. We pay lawyers to do that.
And currently, May 7th is the date that's been set for when things really start to, proceed in a court here in Los Angeles County. I think the one question I have is that obviously is an extra burden for you to have to deal with when you're trying to focus with a fairly sizable team on, really working on a game. And I think it's fair to point out that a lot of people on this team are people that worked with you over at Infinity Ward at Activision. And so, is it something that you're mindful of on a daily basis? Like, hey, focus on the game, let the lawyers deal with this lawsuit.
Like you said, there's two lawsuits, against Activision, and a lot of the people in the second one are working with us now. So, yes, there's people that are involved in it. It's not really a huge distraction. Like I said, it's the lawyers that deal with that kind of situation. Sometimes, we have to go and do, things, answer questions, whatever. But for the most part, we're concentrating on making a game. That's what we do. That's why we're in the game industry. That's what we all love. That's, so that's what our focus, that's what we try to push our focus to.
And I have to say, with that many people following you from Activision, I don't know, I think it speaks kind of well of this. And I think it's important that obviously Infinity Ward and now Respawn is not just you and Jason. Obviously, you do have this team that also got caught up in these legal troubles of trying to get the money that it sounds like you guys may be owed out of Activision, and that there's a large group of people affected by this.
Yeah, there's a large group of people affected by it. But Respawn is, it's a whole new company. There are a lot of people that did come from Infinity Ward and joined us.
And some came from G4.
Some came from G4. We have
Yay!
One person.
That's like 12% of our staff, though. So on XPlay.
But we have people from all over. We have some guys from the God of War team. We have some guys from Disney. So it's a whole new team. It's an amazing group of people.
Is there a philosophy? I mean, now let's just talk about Vince and sort of your career in video games. But you have been part of some of the most significant games of the modern era, and I think Matt can concur with this. I was working with Matt when the original Call of Duty came out. And it was just, and to be fair, Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, which you also worked on back at EA, there was a sense of revelation about those games in the way that they handle combat and the way that that it just felt a little bit more vital. I think than other stuff on the market.
It was the move out of the idea of the corridor shooter and into you can do a beach, you can do a field, you can do a more open thing and let you kind of wander your way through it. I remember I came back from the Call of Duty 1 event. Freaking out at you about how like in the Russian one you don't start with a gun, you have to wait for someone to die. It was more drama to it than just like point crosshairs kill thing.
I mean, has that been like sort of a very cognizant foundation of your philosophy in game design?
Definitely. I mean, I think especially with Allied Assault, it was kind of when EA came to us originally, they were doing a PS2 game called Frontline, Medal of Honor Frontline. Their original pitch was we want someone to do a PC port. And so, we kind of looked back and said, well, no, that's a horrible idea. But what we'll do, give us some time. We'll come up with a design that's, if you want to capture the PC market, you need to do a game for that market. So we came up with the design for Allied Assault. And
because that's right. For people that don't remember, the first one or the first two Medal of Honor games were on the PS1. And it's coming from Steven Spielberg. It was during the Saving Private Ryan time, World War II, Greatest Generation. But, I mean, there really was a significant leap. Isn't that, yeah, there you go. Yay.
That is a battle cry. They probably don't use that often, but yes.
I mean, when you approached it, was it something where you knew you were doing something different with Allied Assault?
I think it was a vision of, like you said, kind of making the world come alive. It wasn't necessarily, like, hey, this is going to be groundbreaking, but we just looked at it as, what can we do to make this the most compelling experience? It's has to be. It encompasses a bigger ideal. It's World War II. There's a whole world going on around you. There's a whole war going on around you. You can't tell the story of, of that war without realizing that there's something going on in the town next to you or over here and in the skies above you. And so it was just bringing extra elements into the game to make it feel more alive.
What were the limitations? Like, now we expect, now we expect all of that. I mean, if we can't look up and see the sky, we're like, this game is garbage. Why am I buying this? Why am I playing this on the Wii? Right? Yeah, thank you guys. But what were some of the things you're like, we're kind of moving into this brave new world. We really want to do this, but we just can't do it.
Well, the funny thing is, because I mean, if you look at the Allied Assault packaging, it's D-Day. If you looked at the marketing campaign, it was D-Day. At E3, they built a Higgins boat that you went into to see the game. And in the original design, it was called out as, this is something we're not sure we can do. But it would be great.
It's really cool, man.
Yeah. And it just became, it took on such a life of its own that people just wanted to do it. And there was, so much kind of trickery that you had to do there. It's like, when you turn away, every person you're not looking at is deleted. Every AI is deleted. And we had to do special, kind of just characters running on splines down the beach that looked like AI, but they weren't. And it was a lot of work. I mean, there was awesome. Months and months and months went into that level to make it what it was.
To Matt's point, I think, and I think that sequence and the beginning of the Russian sequence that you're talking about, there's so much happening in the periphery that it does start to give the illusion to the player that I'm in the middle of something, and it does get your heart going. It's not just I'm alone in a room, and whatever is in this room must be an enemy, and hence I will shoot it.
Right.
I mean, it really was effective. I just remembered that I got a videotape of the D-Day sequence, and obviously there was nothing intentional about this because it had been in the mail for a couple of days. I got it on September 12th, 2001. And it was this rather surreal moment, just even being at work at Tech TV, saying, all right, I need to distract myself, popping it in, and just sort of watching this. Well, I still think it's one of the more seminal moments of the early 2000s in terms of game design. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just realized that was 2001. What was your first game that you worked on?
My first game that I worked, let me see, I started working at a company called Game Tech in North Miami. And you're on a blank on when that might be, but...
You were young.
We
were young. Yeah. The industry was young. There's a lot of youth. But Supercross... was I think the first game I can think of with a name that I recognized that you worked on. I mean,
that was actually at Atari. That was at the next company. So
okay, so you went from Miami to Atari,
Yep.
working on Supercross. I mean, back then, I mean, I have to ask. I mean, did you see that you would have this position in the industry? Did you have the ambition to hold this position? Because the industry wasn't where it is now.
I mean, I think you always expect yourself to do well and be successful, but I mean, I don't know, what position do I hold now?
A rather influential one. Someone back me up on
I mean,
this.
top 10 developers under 40, or in your case, under 20. I mean, Cliff Blazinski's number one, but it's probably because Gears 3 just came out. I'm sure if they redid this list at some point in the near future, that's a hell of a position, right? I mean, when you think about the fact that a lot of the franchises that I think are still incredibly successful were created a long time ago. I mean, to be one of the top under 40, I think is a big deal because you guys represent really this generation, I think, of game design, and you guys are the ones taking it at a different level. So I think that's a big deal, and you can pay me for that anytime you want.
Money well spent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different aesthetic. I mean, Call of Duty set the as made by Infinity Ward set the tone for shooters this generation, I think. And
Yeah.
so I remember I went to Infinity Ward's offices to review Call of Duty 2 for the launch of the 360 because it was everything was so down to the wire, like no one was able to send anything out. And I remember I was kind of like, oh, another World War II shooter. I'm like, I can't believe I got to drive all the way to the valley and do it.
Thanks.
They sat me
Those
down.
are the challenges we face in our jobs. I don't want to drive to the valley.
They sat me down. Yeah, whitewine.com. They sat me down and I started playing. I played like the first two levels, and and it was like the assault on the building in the Russian campaign. And I remember like the building came down, and I was like, I'm out of breath. Like,
I was getting phone calls from Matt.
and I was like, who are these people? Like, what have they done? But you have like the cinema aspect. You have the spectacle and the kind of the interweaving story and the regenerating health that kind of makes it playable for the mass audience. And I think pretty much every major shooter has used that.
I mean, I think it's an interesting point when he was talking about, I'm going to go play another World War II shooter. I think it's possible to look at, where you and your team have been, with Medal of Honor and then the first Call of Duty. Okay, boom, World War II shooters got really, really big. And then suddenly the contemporary modern shooter with obviously Call of Duty 4 made everything really big. I mean, there is that part of me that goes like, you seem to have some sort of zeitgeist effect surrounding you. I mean, if you wouldn't mind describing sort of what's that process like when you made the transition from World War II to modern games? I mean, did you think it would be that influential? Did you have any sense? And then what was your reasoning for wanting to do it?
I mean, at that point, we had done 3 World War II games. That's 6 years of doing that, and it's you kind of put confines on you, which is great because you design within a kind of a scope. It makes it a little easier in some respects and harder in others, but. So you come up with all these things, and it's like, well, we can't really do that. We can't really do this because it doesn't fit in the historical context. And we tried to maintain strict historical context as much as possible, but still making a game. So then it was kind of a natural progression for us to like, okay, now let's take the next step and be able to tell a fictional story using these same elements. So
now, I mean, how much, and obviously probably even more so with World War II, given sort of the role it has in American history. I mean, there is that point where you need to kind of really respect the tradition and the reality, but then you are trying to make something that's fun. And and that if you make it too real, it becomes very, very unpleasant. I mean, how tough is that ebb and flow there?
I mean, it's tough. It's something that we do though, so I don't know. I mean, it's you make the game fun, and then you just kind of wrap everything around it. So fun is always the key. It is a game,
right?
But like you said, you don't want to do something that would upset people.
No, it's and obviously I've seen a couple of games that deal with sort of the historical climates, and a little bit too much fun. It's like, hold on a second, this really happened, and there's some dead people associated with it.
Was there ever any thought to maybe, obviously the natural progression for you guys is to create a fictional story with the mechanics that you're really good at already applying to gameplay, but was there ever a thought at all to just go in a completely different direction? And say, let's go make a platformer with dragons. Like, was there, you know what I mean? Did you ever think, was there ever any discussion like, let's just do something completely different? And then what happened to that idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's always discussion of, like, okay, what should we do next?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I mean, we just kind of had the ball rolling. There was a natural drive to do more and push that. And push that along. So never anything serious, I would say.
Cool.
What I'm curious, kind of like at what point, sort of, Infinity Ward was a good, always a great team making all the Call of Duties. But I remember coming into Call of Duty 2, everybody was like, "So, do you like it? Is it good? Like, what do you think?" And then when I went in and did Call of Duty 4, everyone was just like, "Yes, it's awesome." Have fun. Like, 'cause we knocked this one out of the park.
I believe there were people.
I was like, "Oh, these guys know what they're doing."
I remember
now.
that press release. I think it was just it's awesome. That's it, and the release date.
The Ferris wheel sequence when you were there doing the review. I believe there were people going, "Yeah, we got you."
Like him, and Jason, everyone was coming in and sitting into their theater and just watching. It's like, yeah, call Mackie. He's gonna have to do this for him.
I mean, but it is interesting because Matt's right. I mean, there was no game. I think it was close in strength at the launch of the 360, like Call of Duty 2. And to be fair, it was I think quite some time, probably until Oblivion, that you saw another title that really could take that on. But what's funny is, I think I had almost forgotten about the Call of Duty franchise until Call of Duty 4 came around. And I remember that was the E3 with no air in it. It was out in Santa Monica. It was that horrible little hangar.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
I mean, despite all the hardship, I remember even at the Judges Week, preceding that by a month, everyone's like, "You have to see this game. It's absolutely incredible." And it's like, "Oh, that's
the
right."
Ghillie suit thing where they all stood up at the Microsoft press conference and the whole audience went,
Yeah.
you didn't really hear it on TV, but like in the actual stadium, like it was like I'd never heard a reaction like that. I mean, people freak out and cheer and stuff, but everyone was like, it was a whole stadium going,
and it is one of the slower sequences in the game, and nonetheless, it was absolutely and utterly compelling. I mean, graphically was probably the first thing. Anyone who just took a look at that game went, "Whoa! I think we've just seen the next step of where a game can go." Right. I mean, when you're constructing a game, I mean, what's the first thing you look at? I mean, obviously, graphical fidelity has become very important to you guys. Is that where you start, and then things build from there?
No, I would say it focuses more on gameplay, and then you build other things to support that.
Now, okay, with a shooter, because let's just say you don't exist in a vacuum. You play other shooters that are out there. I mean,
absolutely.
When you look at a shooter and you're talking about the gameplay of it, what has to work for everything else to work in succession?
For me, like smooth gameplay, like playing Rage now, it runs at 60 hertz. It's smooth. It's more fun. It just everything looks more alive. It feels better. The world's kind of.
It does, but I have to ask you why. I know this is somehow very satisfying. There's a sense of just like if I can get a beat on someone's head, it's just a more satisfying headshot. What is it about frame rate that really accomplishes that?
Movement feels more fluid when you move. And you look to the left, it doesn't lag. It goes. It's there. It feels more fluid. It draws you in more. It's
just
nice.
yeah. I guess it's
That's the feeling when we talked about Rage. We played it at PAX, and we were trying to kind of communicate what we felt about it, and it was literally just like it just kind of feels good, man. That's all.
It's like eating something with a lot of French butter on it. I think that's the closest I can get to what 60 frames a second seems to feel. So I mean. When you lock in that 60 frames, I mean, does everything sort of follow in suit? Or like, what are those important things so it doesn't become the shooters that we used to play, back in the 90s and even the early 2000s, where it's just like shoot. It's just this, something that does become repetitive. Even though if you look at shooters nowadays, that core mechanic is still something that's repeated incessantly through the course of the game.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's putting more into the game. It's not just a series of hey, shoot these guys. There's more to it. There's puzzles. There's, kind of different elements. There's things you can do. There's things to look at to distract you. So it's just it's a fuller, richer experience, I would say.
And maybe, like, I've always noticed one of the things about your games is that to give the player and kind of the level time to breathe. Like, there's quiet moments, and then crazy stuff breaks out, whereas like, a lot of shooters just think they have to throw stuff at you constantly, and it gets numbing, whereas, like, you guys have a pacing that you seem to stick to.
I mean, I think that's what I've been noticing a lot this generation is the games that have the strong pacing and the games that kind of, let's turn it up to 11, and then maybe we'll reach 12 somewhere in the second act of this game. I mean, is there kind of a logic so you don't just hit that like, hey, it's just going to be someone yelling at you for the next 10 hours?
Yeah, I mean, even in games I play, it's like if it's constant noise, then that's what it becomes to you. It's noise.
Yeah.
It resets your level. When that goes up and down, and like there's slow moments and there's some tension, and it causes you to like, hold on a minute. Now you've kind of broken what's going on here. So now I need to be cautious. What's going on around that corner? And then the action starts up again. Now it's more jarring, and it's the same amount of action that you had before, but because of that lull, it makes it that much more kind of visceral.
I mean, I think Favela is one of sort of the most interesting pieces of level design this generation. Just because it is you're still doing the shooter, but there's a sense that you have. And I don't know how much choice I really have in the directions I can take, but I sure think that I have a lot of choice in that moment. And just with all the various levels, and you're working up a hill, and it's so dirty. I mean, that struck me as one of the centerpiece moments in Modern Warfare 2. Sort of looking at that isolated moment, like how did you approach it? Because it does stand out from all the other levels as something very unique and different.
Well, there's some games that are wide open and they're made to be that kind of sandbox game, and that's what they excel at. Modern Warfare 2 wasn't that. You want choices, but you don't want unlimited choices where you can go anywhere and go to the top of that mountain if you want. Like that's great for a game that supports it. That wasn't what we were going for. So there's choices. You can go left, you can go right, but ultimately you're kind of funneled into one area.
And I think that speaks to something. I mean, we see this a lot because people are writing in, and that certain words become a pejorative without sort of, I think, people thinking through, like linear suddenly becomes negative. It's like, well, sometimes linear is just fine if you have a good story to tell. Or,
movies are linear. I love movies. I mean,
yeah. An open world movie sounds like the worst idea I've ever heard of.
It's called life, man. And sometimes it's just not that enjoyable.
I mean, how do you deal with the whole, because even though, yes, your games are very popular, there are these sort of flavor of the month and these monikers. Someone wants to slap open world or fully interactive environment on the back of the box. I mean, how do you sort of entertain some of those notions, but obviously do what makes a good game?
Well, I mean, everyone should concentrate on doing certain games will take better to certain themes.
Right.
Not every game should be the same.
Right.
I play games. I want all games to be different, and I want all games to be good. So, I love open world games. Doesn't mean I want to make one. Doesn't mean that this game is good for one. Doesn't mean that game's good for one necessarily.
I think using a recent example, we were just talking about Rage, and I think that's the number one game where people are like, hey, so how open world is it? I'm like, I don't think it's not.
It's kind of like a hybrid, right? Because it gives you this feeling of being an open world game, but you definitely you're going in this direction. There's only one direction to go in, and it is this direction.
If it was much more open, it'd be like, well, now I'm just driving around a desert. I kind of want to get to that good stuff where I'm shooting people in the head. I mean,
But you have some choices in there. You can do the side missions. You can do the races. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to expand that experience out if you want, or if you're just really, you want to drive through the story as fast as possible, pun intended, then you can.
I mean, is some of that, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Having that open space is illusory in terms of like, hey, it's you feel like you are somewhere, even though the purpose of the game isn't to go find all the little things that are hidden in the nooks and crannies of that somewhere. I mean, how much of game development is kind of that level of trickery, and how much is exactly what you see right there on the screen?
I think it depends on the game.
Yeah,
like something like Rage, it makes the world seem more alive and believable, and that's great.
Now, in terms of like, once again, as Matt was saying, you guys really have helped define what the modern shooter is, especially this generation. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people are trying to do the same thing, or not. Now, I wouldn't say just outright copycats, but are kind of looking at that model and trying to sort of find their way of interpreting it. There is that sense that it's starting to flood the market a little bit, and that the shooter has to evolve. I mean, you play enough games out there. Do you think that we've kind of reached a tipping point for sort of what Call of Duty 4 established all those years ago?
I don't know. I think, how many times have you heard that there's a saturation point for one type of game or another?
I've probably said it half of those times.
Yeah, I've heard you say it. But, at the end of the day, what players are looking for is a fun experience. If the experience is fun, if it's a shooter, if it's a more RPG element shooter, if it's an open world shooter, whatever, I think the experience is what you go for.
Do you think it becomes hard for those other games to distinguish themselves out in the marketplace when they're also sort of trying to align themselves with sort of the top tier representations of their various genres? I mean, it seems that it's an added challenge. It's fine for Call of Duty because it's a no name. It's fine for Battlefield. That's a no name. But I think for some of the kill zones and for some of those games out there, as fine as they may be, it's like, hey, how do you say, hey, I'm different? Come play me.
Yeah, I guess that's a challenge. I mean,
I'm talking to a man who doesn't have that level of challenge when he does
Oh,
it.
no.
Well, you've got like even like Ghost Recon, which I think predates a lot of predates Call of Duty 4, is now playing catch up to Call of Duty 4 with the new one. You're like, oh, I see where you're getting that. Hell, I was playing Ace Combat Assault Horizon, and it's modern warfare with jets. Like they are clearly like they looked at the Modern Warfare games and they're like, we got to do this now, and
it has cloaking
it's
armor.
Weird. It's weird. Well, yeah.
At some point, I would like the military to catch up, unless they already have this cloaking armor and they haven't told us yet.
Well, how would you see it?
Yeah,
I guess
maybe
that's
it's
true.
already
Well,
there.
You can kind of see it in Predator. It's like looks different.
I don't think they're going to build in the flaws of the science fiction camo thing.
As long as there's no water on it, you'll be
some
fine.
kind of a chance. I guess that's my game rules. If you have full cloaking armor, it'd be a nightmare to try to play that level.
That's true.
I mean, obviously you would play shooters out there, but like what are your other interests in terms of games that you like to play, or do you try to just dabble in everything?
They'll try to do a little bit of everything, but some games capture me more than others. I love RPGs. I love shooters. Racing games. From time to time, I'll play them for a month or so, and then I'm kind of okay. Now I need to back off a little.
I mean, how do you balance? I mean, because I think we have this problem here. RPGs, I think all of us love them.
Yeah.
There's also just that,
We're all terrified of Skyrim.
I know.
As
Yeah.
we're like,
We're
Well,
clearing
that's
out
the
everything
thing,
we can right
is
now
that
to make sure that
we're all sort of stuck in a job, especially like right now. We're involved in it a lot, and that you look at these massive RPGs, it's like, how am I going to get my head wrapped around it? Obviously, for someone in your position, it's good to play these games, but you also have this other game you have to be making as well.
Yeah, but I mean I enjoy games. That's my downtime. I go home and I play games. It's.
I guess I feel better about myself hearing that. I'm like, is this just redundant with my life?
you expect like the major developers just sort of like make games during the day, and then they go back to like dripping champagne palaces, and they never think about games again.
Or maybe they sit there and they play
Champagne palace.
canasta, a little bit of bridge. I mean, actually,
Abby was going to teach me how to crochet.
Knitting.
Knitting,
I
crochet,
can't
whatever.
whoa, don't get the two confused. They're very
where you
different
learned that.
sports.
It's really different.
See, that might be just based on the fact that all of us need to have our hands in a certain type of motion at all times, or else we feel like we're going to be dying right there.
I've got an interesting question. We've obviously we've been talking about the fact that that you guys really kind of define what a modern shooter is. You said you like RPGs. Can you think of any franchise that you think has defined the modern RPG?
I think like the Elder Scrolls series has kind of really pushed to the forefront. Now with Skyrim coming out, and I played tons of Morrowind and Oblivion, and
I think everybody that talks about Skyrim gets that look on their face.
I know, it's just not like,
just
I'm
so excited
I'm
about
so
it.
Scared. We're all buying plane tickets for our
300
wives.
hours.
to
You know
go.
what I've heard?
What? Oh yeah, 300 is
300.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't wait for that.
That's a challenge.
Yeah.
That's why I'm planning the wedding now, so I don't have to worry about it later.
What about like we haven't really talked much about the multiplayer of games, which is obviously a huge component of the stuff you made at Infinity Ward and before. What are you playing that's like multiplayer right now, or do you play that?
I'm actually not playing much multiplayer on console at the moment. I'm running through Rage single player. At some point, we'll do some multiplayer on that. I've been doing a few iPhone games. Like there's a card battle game that I've been doing
Really?
against some of the designers at the office, and then like just like Words with Friends or something. Like that's.
Now, on the topic of multiplayer, once again, going back to what the influence of the Call of Duty series has had, is sort of this, how important multiplayer has become, not just creatively, but really as a business thing, to sort of give people a reason to find longevity in that game once they get it, which, like we were talking about earlier, has led to the sense that there are games that have multiplayer that probably shouldn't be there. I mean, because I think a player's relationship with multiplayer is much different, because you kind of fixate on one thing to get better over time, rather than single player where you can dibble and dabble. I mean, do you have any sense if multiplayer is another thing that has to sort of see some sort of change in the marketplace, or do you think it can really sort of support, as many games are trying to have, just shooter multiplayer attached to it?
I don't know. I mean, how many of those do well? It's hard.
I know.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I see a lot of the co-op stuff. Like you can play through Gears co-op.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a way of re-experiencing the thing that sort of made the game. I mean, I woke up this morning to see this report from an Australian magazine that Mass Effect is going to have multiplayer. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is that. I mean, once again, I hate to throw you with the nexus of all these interesting things, but once again, we hear all these things like, why do we need multiplayer for this? And it all seems to have this line that seems to come back to Call of Duty. I mean,
I personally don't feel that all games do. I love, something like Red Dead Redemption was an amazing game. I played all the way through it. I loved it. I didn't want to play the multiplayer necessarily. I tried it, and it was all right. But I mean, that was
interesting.
Single-player story experience. Great.
It was incredible, but at the same time, the multiplayer in Red Dead Redemption, and I think you could look at Assassin's Creed. I agree with you. It, for me, it felt slight and something I could enjoy for a couple of days, but it was different as well.
True.
Like the multiplayer in Red Dead was like, I've always wanted to get a posse together and go take down some bad guys.
Yeah, I think you might remember that. Like when I played Red Dead, like I played online with my normal little group. And we played 40 hours of online before I touched the single player.
Wow.
And so going through the single player was like deja vu. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. We kind of did this mission online.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it was because of the addiction of it was the six of us and we're riding together in a
maybe
line.
I didn't have a
it's like,
posse, so I should have.
If you had a posse, that's the key.
And it's interesting
Like
because
so many things in life.
single player, but I think sometimes more so multiplayer, and this includes co-op, you're kind of servicing a fantasy. Like, you're all young once. It's like, I want to get together with my buddies and we're going to have adventures together. And that never really happened.
Hide behind shoulder-high walls, and we're going to shoot monsters.
Yeah, and I mean, but I mean, there is a sense that you kind of get, and many other developers get to have that role of indulging things that were maybe slightly dismissed in the back of the head, but are very latent kind of desires of sort of a sense of strength, a sense of camaraderie, and doing things together with friends. I mean, do you see yourself as kind of this magician who kind of like allows these things to sort of take place for a short period of time?
Are you a puppeteer of children's lives? Dude, on the other end of the spectrum, do you feel that people are... I feel like a lot of people now, if they don't get offered like a 40-hour single-player experience, they feel gypped if they're spending $60 on a game. Do you feel like developers maybe feel pressure to add multiplayer to games because they don't want people to say, hey, I spent all this money on this game and it only took me 15 hours to beat?
I mean, I think it has gotten to the point where people expect a multiplayer experience, or developers, put it in, whether it's last minute or not, and I don't know.
It's all the efforts to keep you from selling that game back. It's the
I guess, and then I've said this, that you don't look at other creative products in the same way. I've never said like, oh man, I wish that movie had 3 more hours in it. I mean, I wish that album had 15 tracks more. I didn't feel like it got anything.
Sometimes don't you wish like The Wire had about 6 more episodes?
Yeah, okay, yes, because the narrative itself I wanted to see a little bit more. I felt
but only 6 more though. Don't give me a lot more.
Yeah.
Just enough.
But
that's DLC. We'll just get some Wire DLC, man. It's all good.
It is that problem, and as long as I've been sort of evaluating games and been in the industry, there's been this horrible tension that is it a technical product or is it a creative expression? And if it's the latter, it just saying bang for your buck just seems to sort of undermine the integrity of the creativity that went in it. But then at the same time, I've seen some games that, while somewhat strong, are delivering 4 hours of experience and trying to go on the market at $60, and then I can't in good conscience say yeah. Oh God, no, you can't do that.
But would slapping some multiplayer on that 4-hour experience make it that much better?
No, it doesn't. I mean,
I have never played a game that didn't have multiplayer and go like, God, I really wish this had multiplayer. I mean, it's
right.
Now at the same time, if there's a single player game that has multiplayer that isn't that great, I can easily dispense with that multiplayer and just kind of move on to something else and just admire what they did in the single player system there.
I mean, it's probably a little easier for me. I mean, now that I'm busier, I'm older, I have a family, so I get home, I don't have the same time to put into, or when I do, I put the time in, like, okay, my wife goes to bed, and now I'm going to stay up till 3 a.m. from like 11 to 3, I'm just going to go crazy. But then there's less people that I want to play with on.
I mean, I find this to be the fascinating element, is that my anxiety about co-op is I don't want to commit to somebody else and then I have to go make dinner. I have to go, take care of something. I mean, it is funny that what's become so popular in video games seems to run contrary to adult existence.
Find people that have similar situations. We could not play co-op with 17-year-olds because they wouldn't understand why we weren't there at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's like why can't you play all day? It's like
Right.
because I can't do that.
I mean, do you think the industry is going to, because all the stats about who the average game consumer is put it in the 30s, in the mid to late 30s, not even the early 30s. I mean, is this something, you have a family? I mean, you're thinking that, how to make games not more family friendly, more family cognizant, and that the level of commitment that you can sort of expect from the player to get that full level of enjoyment out of it.
I mean, in some games, I don't think you can do that with. I mean, there's other games like like the Lego series. Like I'll play those with my kids. We sit down and we play them split screen and we have fun. And
but just sort of in time management, because there are some games out there that if I had 30 minutes to spare, I probably don't want to play that particular game because it kind of there is muscle memory and sort of that process of doing that. I mean, and we are seeing the rise of the social games out there that seem to be filling in this void. Like, I need to do something with my hands for the next 10 minutes. I mean, are those things that you think for like the games you guys make and those other AAA titles out there that they're going to have to sort of recalibrate to acknowledge that, time management can be a challenge for people to want to commit themselves to a game?
I think there's ways to do it. I mean, that you can do kind of more social games that tie into the games that you're working on the console, the bigger games, and work together. So that way you kind of feel like you're connected when you're on lunch break or something. You can tap in, see what's going on, maybe do a few things to prepare, and then when you get home, you go back to the big experience.
I mean, do you see threat from the social gaming? I mean, there are some people out there that seem to really act with a great deal of apprehension. Other developers seem to be like, hey, the two things can coexist peacefully.
I think they can coexist peacefully. I do both. I mean, there's different times or different experiences. I would never want to give up, my Blockbuster gaming.
Oh, yeah. You're into this Smurfs game.
No, correction. I was.
You was?
I was into this.
Are you like have the DTs? Because it sounds like the Smurf game is...
It's a problem.
What's Smurf for heroin?
Smurf. I think it's just Smurf. Yeah.
Smurf. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, when you look at something like that, what is it doing that is so effective and has captured so many people that I think would typically not play a Smurf game?
Well, I like the Smurfs. So I'm going to go out. I'll go out
Go
there
for
on a
it.
limb.
They are Smurfy.
I grew up watching the Smurfs. I like Smurfs. So, I don't know. The game, it was just something to try. It was, I'm not on Facebook, so I've never tried any of those kind of casual Facebooky games. So I wanted to try it and just messed around with it for a little bit.
I mean, do you see game design in something like the Smurfs games that is that is similar to what you're doing in a game like Call of Duty, or are they just or is it just apples and oranges, chalk and cheese, that kind of thing?
It's pretty different, I would say. It's it's kind of there's a little bit like there's that kind of building up element like that some games have, like a Modern Warfare. You unlock over time. You build up your character. It's that RPG kind of style element. You get a little bit of that in like a Smurf style game where you build up your village.
Smurf style game. That's
I'm
my
gonna
favorite
get a
phrase,
new
by the way.
hat.
In a
My
Smurf
hat's
style
white
game.
again. Damn.
Well, it's no building a feudal Japan.
I don't want to talk about that
Yeah.
game, man.
No. Here, I went on record for Smurfs.
No,
man.
no. It's not. I will say this. Somebody in my house, there's only two of us, so you guys can draw your own conclusions. It's not me, has spent close to $200 on Japan Life now. And so there is something there, because that's a free game. And somebody has spent $200. Again, not me, so draw your own
I'm going to
conclusions.
do
but
a pay-to-play game. It's just called Help Dress Adam. And just more or less, it's just the Barney's website, and that you can just, kind of, that you can outfit me from that. And then I don't have to buy
that's
clothes.
not going to do well. I'm just throwing it out there now.
Are you sure?
Amber will play the shit out of that game.
I might
but
actually try it, but I don't know that you'd want to wear what I pick.
Yeah.
That's true, but see, you can abuse me.
Yeah,
See,
maybe that's the appeal is.
I think
like
we could
something
go in
I show
on
up
this.
to work.
Yeah, I'm into that.
All right.
I'm
And
into
it's
that.
like,
Yeah, I still don't think that they're that much of a threat in the sense that I will never not play Mass Effect 3 because I've been busy playing Words with Friends.
well,
Right.
and I guess,
Exactly.
and I agree. I agree with both of you. I guess there's that part of me that looks at sort of this gold rush that you seem to see in people's attitudes towards what can happen with these games, and I go, bubble. I mean, there's just I think there's always a place for these, but I mean, it almost sounds like, hey, this is going to save us. And first, I didn't know we need to be saved in the game industry.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, last
Yeah.
I checked, console game launches did fairly well.
Here and there.
I mean,
So,
do
you know.
you see a healthy industry? I mean, there seems to be some people. I don't think anyone says it's terrible, but
Oh,
there
a lot
seems
of people
to be.
say it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean,
you go on any forum and everyone's like, worst generation ever. It's just all dude bro shooters and stuff.
well,
and it's just
okay,
like,
not in terms of quality, which is just a side, but I mean, is it healthy economically? I mean, like the industry, do you? I mean, it seems to weather this storm.
Yeah, I
very
think
Yeah,
the,
that's
you
a
know, the
nice shirt he's
economy's,
wearing, man. They're not struggling over there at Respawn.
Well,
He's doing
thank
fine.
I broke out my Sunday finals.
Yeah, it's
for
very
you.
nice. Thank
It's
you
for
very
man.
much. I really
Should
appreciate
appreciate
that.
that.
Thank you. But I think that's why, and I've always been interested ever since ever since that whole thing was announced. I thought it was like the best thing that could happen in the industry because it allows people to be creative, but they still have the financial and marketing backing of a giant company that's already made a ton of money. I think right there that speaks volumes as to how healthy the industry is. That a company that size is willing to give you their money, but still let you do your thing. Like that's creative faith that just doesn't exist in a lot of
it's
other
also
industries.
EA, kind of had that like, let's not be evil.
Yeah.
Moment. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
years
but
ago.
we
Let's
have
take
seen,
advantage of the fact
obviously,
that other
Activision's
people-
deal with Bungie has followed in suit, but this is this very interesting change where certain where there's been a lot of experience. Insomniac now has this with EA partners, where there is this ownership of IP and a confidence in obviously what the product could be. I mean, I think a huge transition, or a corollary is the studio system in Hollywood. You know, back in the mid '60s, where they stopped owning everything,
Sure,
and allowed for Francis Ford Coppola to make the Godfather, and for Michael Cimino to make Heaven's Gate. it's an ebb and flow.
Not everything is a positive.
But I
but it
mean,
needs to happen.
do you think that I mean, obviously you're a beneficiary of this transition, but that strikes me as, I mean, a significant change and one that we may not see the benefits of for maybe until next generation when it becomes more commonplace.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that it's maybe starting a trend, or there's a trend that's already there that we're picking up on, whichever way. But I mean, it's more about people that are doing these creative jobs to be empowered to, know that you're protecting this. You're going to pour your life into this. You're going to pour endless hours over years of your life. You want to know that people are going to treat it with respect.
I think that's good because that brings us to a question from a viewer who heard you were on the show,
Uh-oh.
and he's like, Alpha Meerkat. Wait, Meerkat. Isn't that from a cartoon?
Well, it's an animal.
Oh, well, yeah.
from
That was like the animal du jour like 4 years ago.
Yeah, because of Timon and The Lion King.
That's right. Well, yeah. Didn't they? Like, it was
Nathan
like,
Lane defines the cartoon animal trends. I don't
Didn't
know
they
if
So
show like the
Nathan
real,
Lane is
like
the
the real
meerkat.
meerkats of the Serengeti or something like that,
Yeah,
where
it
like
was
you
a
followed
reality
an
show,
animal
yeah.
around?
Yeah.
And every zoo has a meerkat section.
So if they're represented by Nathan Lane, I don't think there'll ever be an alpha meerkat then. Maybe a
I think
beta.
Nathan Lane is the alpha meerkat.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Then
Vince
That's
Zampella, he directed it directly towards you. Is there something you wish the media could do to make your work and theirs easier? And I'm tying this into your desire for the respect for your creative process that is out there. But I mean, at the same time, this I think plays into some of what we were talking about. These ideas that linearity sometimes becomes bad, and then open world brings with it certain expectations. I mean, how much of a role of the media do you think is shaping people's opinion without letting them just play your game for themselves?
I mean, to be fair, that's what the job kind of is, to report on what the game is. And, I read reviews and I'll look at it, and something, if it gets bad reviews, I'll probably think twice about buying it, or I'll get the demo first, so.
So we can
I
even
think it's
influence
fair.
Vince Zampella. Oh, I'm gonna put that in my pipe and smoke it. No, I'm
your
not.
corncob pipe.
Yeah, my corncob pipe.
Yeah.
And then I'll have some moonshine.
all he does in his office.
But I mean, coverage is. I mean, obviously, we're some of those guys that do that coverage. And I mean, how much do you feel that you need the media? And if you didn't have, especially the gaming press, that people might not know your game exists. And how much do you just wish that they would kind of just be quiet for a little bit? And because obviously, if we're not getting information, we're going to sit there and run stories about how we're speculating. Like, well, maybe they're making a game about unicorns with guns. And I mean, we've seen those stories before. I mean, do you need us? Do you think?
I think so, absolutely.
Really?
I mean,
Actually, no, I don't.
I wouldn't be here today. I mean, we're getting to a place where, there's a more direct link to consumers and to fans of the fan base, but that is, that fan base that we talk to directly is only a small portion of people that, you want to sell to. And they get the word out, but, I mean, it's still that the media is who people look to respect. I mean, there's people watch your show. They read the magazines. They go online and look at the reviews. I mean, I still do.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess. Look, I will say this happily: the gaming press is a fickle bitch, and you can be loved one week, and then within about 3 months, it's like, well, yeah, I'm over that. It's just, remember when John Travolta was really popular after Pulp Fiction, and then he made Michael with Nora Ephron. I mean, it's just, do you try to? Obviously, you probably put that out of your mind, but when it comes time for like your games launching, I've seen this not just. I don't want to say it's necessarily with you guys. I've seen it with a lot of developers, just that sense of anxiety that somehow it worries me that you look for validation from the press, because I think that we're just a bunch of blithering idiots half the time.
It's not necessarily validation. I think we make the game the way we think it should be made, and that it's going to be fun and something that we would want to play. So it's just more of a it's a conduit to a wider fan base.
Do you think that sometimes there's an expectation from games that is just kind of unreasonable? I guess let's not look at the rage problems, but let's look at, say, multiplayer, because this tends to happen a lot in multiplayer, where it's not 100% perfect and stable at the launch of a game. Should people just kind of just come to realize that, hey, there's no way it's going to be perfect at launch. It's too chaotic, a beast.
I don't know. I think that's a decision you have to make on a game-by-game basis. There's some things, like you said, you're putting a game live, and you can't test millions of people.
No, you can't.
It's really hard. I guess you can do betas, and you can do things like that to try to mitigate some of the risk, but it's tough.
That's exactly what the I don't remember his name, but the one of the lead producers or director on Battlefield 3 for DICE was just saying in that article the other day, like, everybody wants a beta, and we put a beta out, and everyone's just like, this is horrible, and it's like, yeah, it's a beta.
Demo. It's a beta.
That's what you wanted, and then and he actually kind of brought up an interesting point where like everyone is complaining that like, oh, Battlefield 3's multiplayer isn't going to be as good as Bad Company 2's, and he's like, does no one remember that Bad Company 2's multiplayer didn't work the day it came out, and then we fixed it, and now everyone thinks it was perfect from day one. So it's like And now it's the gold standard to what our next game should be. But he kind of, it's an interview sort of about the weird sort of cognitive dissonance that goes on when you play a game and then don't have fun, and then have fun later and forget about the not having fun.
Yeah.
It's a very hard beast to track.
Or I don't know if you finish Rage. But
so no spoilers.
I'm not going to tell you, but I had a great issue with the ending, and unlike other endings in other games, and
in that it didn't exist.
And I tried so hard in putting my review together to point out how much I liked everything else, and it just killed me watching some of the comments. I'm like, no, that is not your lasting impression. Oh God, I give up. It does seem to be like the internet, I think, has helped all of us, I think, so much, but then it becomes this uncontrollable conduit where suddenly you're represented in a way you never intended to, and probably is not that close to what the truth is. Let's try another one. I guess just for fan base stuff. Dreadnought, all caps, because he's serious about his Dreadnought status. How is Respawn?
I like that.
How is Respawn going to win the allegiance of PC gamers? With money? Maybe you'll send them like some sticky buns.
We're including
marry a daughter or two off to the royal family of PC gamers.
We're going to include a Smurfs social media game within our game, and that's going to be a big deal.
Mushroom houses everywhere.
So none of that.
Right. We should cross that off our list. God, what a terrible idea. Damn it.
That's going to start that
I
rumor.
don't think we can talk much about that.
What do you think about
talking about what we're doing over there?
What are you seeing with PC gaming? I think I'm interested in this just because I just got my PC upgraded, and I'm going to say this again. I swear to God, you have to do this too. Do you just try to play old games that didn't perform perfectly once you get the upgrade? And I finally realized it's like when I started to date a girl and I wanted my ex-girlfriend to see me on that date. It's just like, ha! I'm running at 60 frames now! Ha ha ha!
Yeah, somebody's been playing Crysis.
So I've gotten back in my interest in sort of what the experience of PC games were. The shooter used to be what the PC gaming was all about. We found a successful way to move it over. I guess the simple question is, do you still see life in sort of traditional games on the PC? Or do you think that the PC is really sort of defining itself more in the social media and in the MMO space that really can't be done on a console?
I think there's room for both. We have guys in the office that are playing Rage on PC. We have guys that are playing it on console. I'm playing it on console, but I'll probably play Battlefield on PC.
Yeah, I think I probably. I mean, but do you think that the PC? I guess the sense I've gotten is that the PC games, they haven't been able to distinguish themselves. There used to be a sense of that is a console game; it should be on a console. That is a PC game; it should be on a PC. And we've kind of lost that. Yeah, you can play it on both, and it's just kind of what your disposition is. But PC game doesn't have as clear a meaning as it once did 15 years ago. that's sad. Just saying.
Well, I mean, PC gaming's been dead or dying according to certain people for the last 15, 16 years. It's taken a while.
Yeah, it's like the Bob Hope of things.
I mean, it always reinvents itself in some way. Like it's always going to find something that it does better than right now. The best example is like it does physics and graphics better than Batman Arkham Asylum looks like almost a different game when you play it on a powerful PC.
And I'm very curious to see when The Witcher 2 comes out on console, because I know it is a PC game, and even though I play with a controller. I don't know if that's cheating or not, but sure, I should love doing that.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, Witcher 2 is going to be interesting in that CD Projekt is seems to be attempting to do a really thoughtful port of it to the 360, as opposed to sort of like, there's money here, just get it out. It's going to be interesting if they pull it off, because, again, like Witcher 2 is a good example of like a PC-only game that you're like, wow, I wish more people could play this. And see what's possible when you kind of have that more open framework the PC allows you.
And I still think there's something, and this is why RTSs and like Civ, there's something about, it's bad posture, but hunching over at the computer allows for certain, I like that, those are my fiddling games. Yep. Where I want to change your outfits so I get better armor. Whereas when I'm on the console, I'm leaning back like this, and that's like, I don't really feel like fiddling today.
I think it's different experiences.
Running The Witcher 2 and playing it.
Yeah.
Controlling it with your foot.
We have another one from Ace Crazy Dude, which I guess means he's really good at
the best
being crazy.
Yeah. Also a guy,
or he's
probably.
Crazy dude who shot 5 planes down.
And I think the first part of his sentence actually speaks to our media question. I read an article that said that there are going to be more advertisements in games, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on the subject. I remember this Spectre kind of reared its head. Was it Battlefield 20? What was the futuristic Battlefield game?
Battlefield 2142.
2142, which I haven't seen as much.
Well, there was also Skate. Remember Skate had when Skate first came out, there were ads for the Simpsons movie all over it.
Yeah,
billboards and graffiti and posters on bus terminals, and it was everywhere.
Do you see product placement on the horizon? Is that something that's going to be necessary if game budgets are as high as they tend to be?
I don't know if it's going to be necessary. I think, to me, there's a place you can do it, or a way you can do it that makes the game better. Like, let's say you make a game based in modern day in this city. You'd want things. You want real buildings. You'd want real cars. You'd want real restaurants. It kind of draws you into the game, and into that world, makes it more believable. When it's forced, like you said, the Simpsons things were everywhere. That's why it stood out. If there was a lot less of that, you probably wouldn't. You would see it, but it wouldn't stand out to you as awkward as much. So,
yeah, I mean,
I think it's the way it's done.
Once Tempur-Pedic tries to find their way to a fantasy game, I think that would be a good indication. Oh, I'm going to go.
Tempur-Pedic bale of hay.
Well, couldn't you see that like in Fallout or in Elder Scrolls? Because there's always those dirty mattresses.
You gotta sleep.
Quick, swap them out with some nice, memory foam out there in the apocalypse.
I always thought that's a wasted opportunity in like a post-apocalyptic game, where like if you want to make the economy interesting, or like you could have like product placement in the sense that people really want, like. I mean, they just kind of did with Nuka-Cola, but people really want Coca-Cola as opposed to like generic sodas.
Or like nostalgia becomes a commodity somehow.
Nostalgia, or like better quality. People really want GM parts that you find for engines as opposed to like Toyota or something. Just like the idea of like in this post-manufacturing world, these certain manufacturers become exceptionally valuable because of some aspect of their quality.
That's interesting. You probably shouldn't have said that out loud, because I would have started a trademark on that and sold it to somebody.
Abby's like,
I'm going to throw one to you. This is from Jay Cicero. Huh. I like that. Someone made let's hope it's a Latin reference. 09. He writes, there's a new book that came out recently called The Book of Man, Readings on the Path to Manhood. Where do they sell these books?
Christian bookstores around the country.
The book puts a lot of emphasis on immaturity associated with young to middle-aged adults that spend hours playing video games rather than finding jobs and starting a family. Please, if you're out there doing this and you're not on that new Tim Allen show, raise your hand and let yourself be known. Why do you think video games continue to have such a negative connotation? Do you ever think that one day playing video games will be viewed similarly to watching football or any other manly activity?
I don't feel like much of a man when I sit on my couch on Sundays drinking with my dog named after the quarterback of the team that I really like. That's not manly at all. That's
no,
pathetic.
that's just
That's
kind
different.
of extreme genuflection.
That's not masculine.
That's a beer commercial.
Yeah.
That is.
Wow, that's quite a
It's
question.
interesting. I think this is associated with an article I just read. I think it was on CNN by William Bennett. He was the former drug czar under H.W. Bush. He's rather conservative, and it's one of those. He didn't seem to come across like he knew much about video games, but yeah, there's just it's just the go-to demon. Like first, it was like violence. We've kind of I think pushed that to the side if it's causing people to be violent. Now it's like that's why everyone's loafish. It's not the bad economy. It's these video games that are keeping people from the workforce. I mean, you've been with the industry long enough. I mean, do you think there's this point where we're finally going to, desist with the Sigma, or do we need to make it more cross-gender for it to happen?
I think, like you said, since I've been in the industry for a few years, as you like to point out, I think the difference from like I remember when I was younger and like through high school or something like that, I would consider myself a closet gamer. Like I didn't, brag about it. Like I'm going this weekend to play Dungeons and Dragons. Want to go on a date?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think like today that
I don't know if that would work today. Either.
Yeah, well, okay.
And also, I like the idea of asking dates with the arms going up and down.
My wife must be proud. I think the difference of where, how gaming was kind of accepted then versus now, I think has come a long way. So I think will it ever be, I think there'll always be someone who'll point at, there's still people that point at music or movies and say, that causes violence or whatever. So I
guess
think
what's
it'll always
interesting
exist. But
is they're saying games are bad for men. They're not bad for people. And that, I guess the one thing that is interesting is this constant issue of, have at least the identification of games become so sort of hyper-masculine that it becomes exclusionary to women, or that it's become too typified as a very, very young male activity. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, what's the how many people are on Facebook games at work when they're supposed to be working? I think that's probably
exactly.
a lot more of a balanced, if not,
well, and then
female-slanted activity.
And the minute you take that into account, I mean, it's actually there's a preponderance of women who are playing games, despite some recent data that I find a little bit suspect about social games out there.
Maybe you read an article.
That's
just
right.
Like he
I
did.
read that
you just
article.
read an article
Watch
about
out
it.
for those articles.
Yeah, I think gaming, if you take social gaming into account, is much more balanced than people realize.
Now, okay, when you say, and this has been a discussion on the show quite a bit, when you say gaming, do you kind of mean to encompass all of that, or do you still think of the more traditional, the console games and the PC games?
I'd say everything.
You think everything? All right, I'm going to retrain myself that way. Let's take this last one. I'm curious to see.
It's still a game.
It is
you play it on your phone. If you play it on a console, it's you're having fun. It's a
my parents tried to sell me on that for piano lessons, and that was it's just like just doing the right thing doesn't give me that level of satisfaction, and I hate myself.
They needed to gamify it.
That's right. See,
did you play the piano game?
There's a piano game.
No.
Piano game is you get lunch if you go to your lesson and then you practice for the next hour.
Sandwich.
Captain Tushiro says, is it possible that Nintendo could in the near future be out of the console market and just be making video games that show up on other platforms? Obviously, they've been getting a little bit of bad press lately, a lot of skepticism about the Wii U. Obviously,
it's not
they
even
were.
out yet.
What?
It's not even out yet.
I know. And I was reading some stuff today. I mean, it looks like some people are once again, as Mark Twain said, now I forgot what he said. Rumors of my death are highly exaggerated. Right. I mean, do you see Nintendo losing its position in the marketplace? I mean, they were so strong with the Wii, but it was a different audience that I think that they couldn't continue to keep that audience very excited. I mean,
they've managed to pull it off pretty much every time. I mean, there's skeptics on a lot of their console, even with the Wii.
I mean,
and it blew up. So,
do you think that we're still going to have a vibrant sense of competition between consoles, with the idea that competition is just healthy for the market? Where the three major. I mean, there used to be a sense that whoever had a console, there was something equitable, and now we're seeing a little bit more of a clear hierarchy that's happening. Do you think that's healthy, or is that not healthy?
I think it's healthy. I mean, it's a different system. There's different games. It's targeted at different people. It's a wider audience. It brings people into gaming. I think anything that gets people to play games, relax, enjoy themselves is great.
I mean, do you think that can a gaming console still just be a gaming console when you're looking at Microsoft that's looking to have streaming television on that? Do you think that's an essential evolution to sort of keep it out there, or is it a distraction from obviously the game purpose, which was the original intended purpose of a console?
I think a console can just be a console. Now, that said, cable boxes are kind of crappy, so I don't mind. If you can bring it to the Xbox and make the experience better, I'm fine with that. But at the same time, if a console's a console, that's what I bought it for. I bought it to play games.
There's something vaguely Buddhist in that. A console can just be a console. And if a console falls in the forest, can you play it?
No,
because there's no
probably not
power
there.
in the forest.
No.
There's no wireless.
But what if
signal
it's a
either,
magical forest that has power?
It's true.
And you just plug into the magic.
Into the pegacorn's butt? Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. I'm into it.
All right.
I think
I am not playing that console.
no, you can play it, just don't plug it in.
Oh, no, if you play enough Smurfs, you get to that part.
Yeah, right?
It's really
Yeah.
interesting. Well, I would like to thank Vince Zampella for joining us today, enduring us for the past hour. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to your team
thank
out
you.
there. Obviously, as we have learned over the years, making a game is not easy, but playing it sure is a lot of fun. So thank you very much for all of your efforts with you, Jason, and the rest of your employees over there. I just want to remind you that members of the G4 family will be streaming games while taking donations for Extra Life. Every single dollar you raise is going to be helping kids through the Children's Miracle Network. You can find out how to participate in this at g4tv.com/extralife. That is going to be happening later this weekend, assuming you're watching this show the week of October 11th. If you're watching it next week, that might actually complicate matters quite a bit. But you donate anyway. Giving to charity makes you feel good. And then you can go play more games, and it doesn't feel as bad when you do that.
If someone
Anyway,
accuses you of not being a man, you can be like, I donated to the Children's Network.
yeah, exactly.
Then go watch football and be more
I
manly.
earned this.
Blair Herder, thank you so much.
Thank
Matt
you.
Kyle, and once again, Vince Zampella.
Yay!
And over there in the corner, Abby Happy. Thank you very much. This is feedback going up on Wednesdays at g4tv.com. You can watch it any other day of the week. So, spread them out over 7 days, or just watch 10 minutes for 70 minutes in total.
Depending whether you're a casual or a hardcore feedback viewer.
Yeah. Identify yourself. Let yourself be heard.
But don't.
Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of X-Play, editor-in-chief at g4tv.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on g4tv.com.